all I can say is wow, 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 wow. What I'm getting to do now is just so amazing. I am going to be retracing Steinbeck's tour around the country, beginning on May 1st, for 15, 16, 17 weeks in 3 phases. I'm going to be taking my Airstream. I've been corresponding with people. Bill Steigerwald, who wrote the most important book on Steinbeck's trip, Dogging Steinbeck, is a friend of mine. We don't always agree, but I think we both like each other. Can't wait to have him in Rocinante. I'm going to pour him a little cup of coffee if he drinks coffee or tea or whatever he likes. And then I'm going to say, as Steinbeck did, Bill, may I sweeten that coffee just a little? I'll take out some nice whiskey or something, and we'll have a long talk. And the first question I'm going to ask him is, so how do you feel about being the bad boy of the Steinbeck world? And he's going to laugh out loud, and we're going to be off and running. And even though we're probably going to get into an argument, and possibly even a heated one, I think we're going to wind up being friends. But today, just now, just minutes ago, I finished an interview with Geert Mak. Geert Mak is a Dutch journalist and nonfiction writer. His book, In America, Travels of John Steinbeck, is by far and away the best book ever written about Steinbeck's 1960 journey, even though the book isn't really that much about Steinbeck. It's really about America, but it's a spectacular analysis of America in 2010 partly through the lens of Steinbeck's earlier journey. And so getting a chance to interview Geert Mak is just like, meeting Michael Jordan in a certain way. And so I loved it, and he was fantastic. He's got a great sense of humor. He's wise. He's thoughtful. He saw some of the same problems in Steinbeck's published book that Steigerwald saw, but without the sense of righteousness and anger. And now he's writing a book on the New Deal, on FDR's administration. Very beautiful temperament. And we had just a magnificent conversation. I hope you love it as much as I did. And the first thing I'm going to do is send it to my friend Russ Eagle, who is a Steinbeck guy, a Steinbeck scholar in North Carolina. And he's going to be so pleased, I think. And I think I'll be talking again with Geert Mak. I'm going to write to him now. I got his email. And I'm going to write to him and ask him if I could check in with him at certain points along the journey. And I invited him to come over to Bethany to have dinner with Steigerwald and with me. I doubt that that's something that he can just pick up and do, but it would be thrilling if he did. He's in his 70s, but in seemingly very, very good health. Anyway, you can hear my sense of joy and excitement because this is just one element of things that are coming together. I've been talking now with photographers. I've been talking with people at the Nixon Presidential Library, and the chances that I can have a meeting with some of them on a yacht just off the coast of California. And I've got friends along the way who are doing field research for me, and Russ Eagle's going to write some descriptive pieces to go along with the essays that I post on our site, ltamerica.org. We're not out there yet, but the word is starting to get out a little bit that I'm doing this, and people are starting to come to us. And I think it's going to be just an unbelievable adventure. I'm preparing for it as I have prepared for nothing previously in my life, reading up a storm, going back through Travel with Charley again and again and again, day-by-day outlines. I've been working on the maps, trying to figure out when I stay strictly on Steinbeck's trail and when I veer a little bit, other things that I want to see along the way. How much time is this really going to take? How do I really have conversations with the American people? And one of the things that Geert Mak said that so impressed me was that the American people want to talk. He said Europeans aren't that way, or certainly not that much. But Americans are filled with hospitality and cheerfulness, and will talk and are eager to tell their story and eager to talk about things. I hope that's true for me, too, because I'm so eager to go out and really sense the mood of the country and to meet extraordinary people. And by extraordinary, I don't mean, published poets and, ceramicists. I mean just Americans who have lives and a point of view and have thought about things and have an idea of what America should be, and then an idea of what America is and how it can be better, and so on. And so that's important that I be able to report back And of course, I have something that Steinbeck didn't have. I have voice recorders, and so I can ask people if it's permissible for me to record what I hear from them, and if so, excellent. Anyway, I want you along for the ride. We're working on an interactive map. There'll certainly be maps. There'll be daily posts on Facebook. So the LT America Facebook site, you should become a friend to. There's also my Facebook site. But the main platform for all of this will be ltamerica.org. Go there, see what we've already done and what we're going to be doing. It's going to be really remarkable because in 2024, the technologies are in place for us to report in real time. It's not like going on a journey in 1960 where all Steinbeck could do was he could maybe talk himself into an interview at an AM radio station, but he didn't. He was interviewed a couple of times along the way, particularly in San Francisco and Monterey, but he was traveling, as he said, incognito. Whether that's strictly true or not is unclear. But he wasn't seeking out media opportunities, and he had no way to post anything. He wrote some letters to Elaine, and we really depend upon those. Then there's the original manuscript of Travels with Charley, which is in the J.P. Morgan library in New York City, and it's quite different from the published version. And then there's the published version from 1962, and then what his son said, and the things that Steigerwald found in meeting people who had met Steinbeck, and this happened to Geert Mak to a certain degree too. So we have a body of information. We have AP photographs and other photographs of that, but we don't have a photograph taken by Steinbeck. Today, of course, he would have a cell phone and he would have taken 5,000 photographs, and however imperfect they would be as artwork, they would be absolutely indispensable to any understanding of that journey. But it was what it was in the time that it was, on a pre-interstate America in a truck without proper power steering or air conditioning. Those are things I'm needing to notice. It's just getting so exciting. This is the big opportunity of this decade of my life, and I promise you I'm not going to fail to rise to the occasion, and with lots and lots and lots of help from others, including people in the LT America world, our little 501c3. And by the way, if you can help, gas cards, help with the dissemination, if you're willing to contribute to the success of the Travels with Charley tour of 2024, my gratitude, our gratitude, will be superb. So anyway, let's go to this show, my interview with Geert Mak of the Netherlands about his 2010 retracing of John Steinbeck's Travels with Charley journey. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Listening to America. I have the enormous pleasure today of speaking with Geert Mak. He's in the Netherlands. I'm, of course, in North Dakota. I've been following his work for a long time. He's a journalist, a writer of nonfiction, a professor, an award-winning writer, and he has two really extraordinary books, among many others. One is called In Europe, which sold hundreds of thousands of copies and won a significant number of awards. And then more recently, in 2010, he followed John Steinbeck's 1960 Travels with Charley tour of the United States and wrote a really splendid book about it called In America, Travels with John Steinbeck. So welcome, Geert.
Thank you. Good to join you. Yes, from Amsterdam. Yeah.
From Amsterdam. I've never been. I would like to come. My daughter is studying at Oxford University. She's been, but I haven't had that chance yet.
Oh, it's not far away. By train, you can do it even now. Yeah.
Indeed.
From Great Britain.
I'm fascinated by your book. There have been many individuals who have retraced Steinbeck, and yours, in my opinion, by far is the most extraordinary of all of those accounts, because you took seriously his mission, which was to search for the spirit and the soul of America.
Oh, for sure. Yes. It was also, I had this idea already for a long time. You said it already. I wrote a book about Europe, and I thought I'd love to do something also, to do something about United States of America. And Steinbeck was always an inspiration for me already when I traveled through Europe. That was also, I stole his idea, in fact. So I thought, yeah, let's do it also about United States. And I found out that just in 2010, it was exactly 50 years ago that he made his trip. So indeed, just exact the same morning, 50 years later, I started from Sag Harbor to do the same, yeah, to make the same trip. But it was also strange because I found out very soon that he also honestly said he made up some stories. I'm an admirer of John Steinbeck, but and his son said it too. He had a dream to talk with people and to meet people. And in fact, he was very, very shy. He was a shy man. So I thought he couldn't. It was one day, and he had met. I remember he met a very interesting guy, and he had a long talk with him. And then he traveled 200 miles, and so on and so on. And I thought, you cannot do that in one day. So that, but still, it is a fascinating book, and it was sold very well in that time, and the Americans loved it. And while it was not exactly good journalism, but Americans, everywhere you saw it, they thought, that, yeah, this is our country. This is the way we live. This is the way we are thinking. So it was a very good mirror of the United States in that time. Yeah, for sure.
Well, we'll come back to several of the themes you have raised here, including how reliable the published account from 1962 is. But just a couple of things first. So he traveled in a truck camper. You traveled in a Jeep. Is that correct?
Yeah. In a Jeep, but his camper was, I saw it in a museum in, where was it? In
Salinas, California,
yeah,
Salinas.
Exactly. So I inspected his truck very well, and it was difficult to drive. Never forget, it was noisy. It was it was a truck, and the roads were also not so fantastic. This was really hard working.
And you traveled with your spouse. He said that he traveled alone. We'll come back to that, but you traveled the whole distance with your wife.
Yeah, my spouse was often with me already, and when we traveled through Europe, and the American trip, yeah, we did it together.
Now, he says, as you know, early in the book, you can't do this journey unless you do it alone. If you're with somebody else, that changes the dynamics. And even though he was fibbing a little bit about that, did you worry about that in traveling with your wife, you might lose something?
Yeah, it's a very good and important question. And other travel books, travel stories I made, I did it often alone. But working together with my wife, it changes things. But on the other hand, it helped also a lot. For instance, I made myself a habit already at 7, sometimes 6:30 already, to join some people in the diners. Everywhere in the United States, people having breakfast and in diners and every morning and at fuel stations, these kind of places. And it's a very good place to talk with people, especially elder people. How was the situation in the 1960? Yeah, how do you think about the United States now? And it was very good when my wife joined me. Sometimes I did it alone, but when my wife joined me, she talked to the woman. And it was very, when we were together, it was very easy to make contact with people. And when you're traveling around and driving around, she was often also, she saw other things than I did. Not one pair of eyes, but 2 pair of eyes. So it was different, yes, but it helped us a lot. And I never regret it when she joins me. And at the other hand, it has to be a little bit fun to travel around. So, yeah.
He, of course, traveled in what you call a caravan, in a camper. Did you consider that?
No, we traveled in a camper a lot earlier in other years, but this time we took motels, very simple places often. And honestly, Steinbeck did that too. He made a very romantic story about it, but most of the time, when what I found out, he stayed also in hotels, and of course, he wrote that his wife in the book, and the last version, that his wife was not there, but he was full of homesickness. And after a few weeks, his wife joined him already, and most of the trip they did, in fact, they traveled together. But the first version of his book, I read it in the library in New York. I saw the manuscript, and there his wife is also in the book. Suddenly it became also I understand very well that his editor and his agent said, "Oh, don't do that," because suddenly it was an elderly couple traveling around, as it was a very bourgeois and dull. All the adventures was gone. So it was certainly another book. And that was, I think, the reason. His agent said, "Oh no, put Charley, his dog, we're in the forefront. Let his wife let her stay at home."
Now, this was not your first journey to the United States.
No. No, we traveled a lot through the United States. I think we made a long trip already now. 15 years before the Steinbeck trip, we traveled by train, for instance, through the United States. And there was a time I worked for the Dutch public radio. I was often twice a year in the States, 3 times a year. I traveled really a lot, did a lot of travel through journalism in the United States, yes.
You were not the only one doing this on the 50th anniversary of the journey, and you had several encounters, at least through communication, with Bill Steigerwald, who wrote a book called Dogging Steinbeck, which was an expose on the fibs and the fiction in Steinbeck's Travels with Charley. And then you, at the end of the book, which I just reread this morning, you two decided that at some point you would get together, and you did in 2014.
We later, Bill came also to the Netherlands when I got some prize, and the people organized that. They invited as surprise Bill Steigerwald. It was really funny. And I really had great admiration. I think he was the first. Yeah, there were some more. A woman for a dog magazine too. But I found out that Bill Steigerwald was just a day ahead of me. In the beginning, just an hour, but later on a day. After 2 weeks, I think, when I was asking some questions in a fuel station, and the guy said to me, "Hi, a few days ago, a day ago, there was the same questions. It's John Steinbeck, huh? Yeah, some journalist from the Pittsburgh Post. It was, yeah." I thought, my God, there is my story. It is gone. So of course, I found out immediately by internet that it was Bill Steigerwald. But we had other, my story was more about the United States and less about Steinbeck, and more about the country and the differences. But I admire Bill enormously because he did it really alone, and he slept in his car, and my trip was rather well financed, so I couldn't take hotels and these kind of things, and Bill was sleeping in his car all the time, and really, he did in fact what Steinbeck did. That was the trip Steinbeck promised his readers he should do, and he never did. But Bill Steigerwald did it. And he was, of course, a very good journalist because, and he is, he found out all kinds of places where Steinbeck bought stuff. He had a good journalistic job, really.
Indeed. We need to take a short break here in a moment, but quickly tell me what happened when you finally sat down together
We were two total different guys. I'm really he is writing also Volvo riding, latte drinking European, and he is really the other political side. But we liked each other immediately very much, and yeah, of course, we were very involved with Steinbeck, and I think he is the only guy who could talk hours about this strip and about all the strange habits of Steinbeck. And you know that? Oh yeah, do you remember that? So it was big fun to meet each other. Really, it was a very good day. Yeah.
We need to take a short break. This is really an honor for me to be talking with Geert Mak, the distinguished Dutch journalist who has produced two really serious books, one called In Europe, which I just ordered this morning, and the other, In America Travels with John Steinbeck. You're listening to a special edition of Listening to America. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Listening to America with Clay Jenkinson. I'm discussing John Steinbeck's 1960 Travels with Charley journey with Geert Mak of the Netherlands, and he's in the Netherlands. He's in Amsterdam today. Geert, back to the problem of authenticity and veracity in Travels with Charley. So Steigerwald wasn't the first person to realize that there's some fictionalizing in the course of the book, but he sort of was nasty about it, and he lost a lot of respect for Steinbeck and said, how can we rely upon him? Most of these incidents didn't occur. He made up all the dialogue. He slept in motels more often than he slept in the rig. His wife was with him for 40% of the time, and so on and so forth. And that really upset a lot of people in the Steinbeck community. But the thing is, his book is extremely important because more than anyone, more even than you, he tracked down every location and tried to find the old motels and the trailer courts and the campgrounds.
I understand that there was some commotion in the Steinbeck community, but yeah, there are, like in every community, there are, of course, believers. We are very different, Bill and I, but I agree totally with him. Steigerwald is a very good journalist, and Steinbeck was a lousy journalist. Not a journalist at all. And when you can say, when Steinbeck would have said, this is a travel story, and honestly, it is a kind of part is a little bit fiction, perhaps, and it is not a journalistic travel trip, then there wouldn't have been a problem. For instance, also Hemingway, he made also a lot of stuff. People were less, let's say, strictly about that in that time, now, there's really and I think it is good. As an old journalist, I think it is very good to be clear about that. To say, okay, really, I try to write about what's happening, what exactly how it is. And other writers can say, I write a very good story and use a lot of traveling. I find a lot of material and I write a story about that. So the story, Steinbeck's story about America was very good. Really, his impression was very good. He picked up the mood of the day, and the Americans agreed with that. But as a journalist, I repeat myself, yeah, he was a lousy journalist. He was not a hero at all. He made himself a hero, lonely hero. Really, he was so homesick. He was longing for his wife. He was afraid to talk with people. That was the reality.
Let's talk about some specifics. So these are Steigerwald's concerns, and I think in many respects they are yours too. Steinbeck's meeting with the potato farmers on the Canadian border, the Canuck incident, where a number of these potato farmers come into his rig, into Rocinante, and they have an evening together. Steigerwald says that probably didn't happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
you think it probably did not happen?
No, I think a lot of things didn't happen at all. No, he made it. Also, that was totally. You can see it is totally made up. Also, it is a very artificial, of course. What he did, he let everybody has his own viewpoint. it was almost impossible to have a good conversation in that car. I found also it was too noisy. So these long, deep conversations were factual impossible. I found, for instance, also notes from a friend of him, of a letter, and he joined Steinbeck somewhere from California to Arizona,
It
2 days.
Toby Street,
Yeah, exactly.
from Monterey to Flagstaff,
Montreux, yeah.
Arizona.
And he complained also. We couldn't talk with each other. It was terrible.
Let me push back a little, though. Is it possible that Steinbeck had something like the encounters after New Orleans, that it wasn't as clean, as tidy, as polished as he makes it, that he invented some of the, or embellished some of the dialogue, but that he had an encounter with a very frightened elderly black man? He had an encounter with a racist white man. He had an encounter with a young black man who was getting impatient with the slow pace of Martin Luther King's civil rights. Is it possible that these are based on real encounters but embellished?
It's very well true, yeah. That that one or two of these encounters in the factual took place, and that one of two encounters are made up. Everything is possible, but that's not really nonsense. No, but. I must say honestly, all these three encounters in the car, it was too polished.
Well, his son said maybe he met nobody right after his death. He just drove around the country as fast as he could to get caught up with Elaine. Let me ask about one more incident. You know, there's the famous moment in the middle of the book where he meets an itinerant Shakespearean actor in eastern North Dakota, and they talk about the theater, and the actor has a letter from John Gielgud folded up in his wallet, and they have this sort of wonderful conversation about love of literature and love of theater. And Steigerwald says that couldn't happen. And when he was in Alice, North Dakota, I'm a North Dakotan, when he was there, he looked around at the vast plains and said, nothing like that could happen in the state of North Dakota. But I can tell you, Geert, those sorts of things did happen. Now, maybe they didn't happen to Steinbeck, but there used to be itinerant thespians and elocutionists who would go around to the schools in the Midwest and talk here and talk there. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And why would he make up, answer this question, why would he make up an encounter with an itinerant actor in North Dakota? It's beyond improbability. So doesn't that give it more authenticity?
Yes. Strange. I agree with you. Traveling around, I never met in North Dakota romantic figures like this, but I know very well when you're traveling around, you meet interesting people. Steinbeck made up a lot of stuff, but it's very well possible that he met this guy indeed in North Dakota. In North Dakota is not cliché. It is totally very unexpected. Sometimes you have situations you think I cannot almost write it down because nobody wants to believe me. But that is the reality. Oh yeah, and it is also a kind of thing you will not invent, which is
Exactly.
it is not a cliché. In this time, it is very well possible, just because it is so almost so strange that it happened indeed.
You have to ask yourself this question, Geert. What advantage does John Steinbeck have in inventing an encounter with a Shakespearean itinerant actor on the plains of North Dakota? How does that advance anything that he's trying to do in this book, right? It has to have happened because it doesn't fit.
You're totally right. A lot of other stuff, yeah, because he wanted to make a show. I'm a loner, and I meet people, and I'm among the people. That's a part of the show. This was not the part of the show. But I think, and that's another side of the story, he needed also, in other cases, the show, because when he wrote this book, he was in a total midlife crisis. He had been ill, he had a writer's block, everything went wrong, and he wanted to show that he was a real man, and a real writer, and a real American. and are alone on the prairie and so on. But of course, part of this book was also to show for himself that he could do this.
You know, you've said a couple of times that there's a sort of an American romance of the lonely man on the road traveling the West. Do you, as a European, do you respond to that favorably? Do you scoff at that? What kind of a phenomenon is that to you?
I think partly, yes, of course. I think, oh, yes, that's of course. We are brought up with American movies, with American culture. This is really part of the American culture. We are also astonished because the violence is also a part of the American culture. And Steinbeck buys also a gun. Bill Steigerwald says, "Yeah, it's very good American," and I say, "Wow, that's really." And for us, that's a part we sometimes we don't like too much when it is too much. Yeah, it is also what us Europeans attracts with it. This is different, but it attracts us. But Steinbeck was also, and that is in that way he is very inspiring for us Europeans. He was also a very human writer. He writes all the time about humans. In this trip, he was afraid of his fellow Americans, but yeah, in the past and before, he's fantastic books about, of course, the 30s and East of Eden, and of course, Of Mice and Men, and so on, and so Cannery Row. It is so well written and so well observed too. Observations, real observations, and in the same times, it is a book. It is a story. In that way, he's for every writer. He's very very inspired everywhere in the world.
What's your favorite of his novels?
I said it already, Cannery Row. I think Cannery Row. Yeah, it is very simple, very short, very well observed, very rhythmic too. His language is great. Yeah, it's beautiful though. Yeah, very good writer. Yeah.
You have barely mentioned The Grapes of Wrath.
Of course. The Great Revolt, and it is a very good way of social reporting, but also he made a story about that, and I think it is good. It is good, and it is a very social book. But I'm now writing about the 30s again, and about Roosevelt years, and about the Second World War. My new book is also an American book. But I found in the archive, for instance, letters who were written by a famous reporter in that time, famous Lorena Hickok.
Of course, she was a member of the FDR administration.
Yeah, and she was paid by it, but she was always fighting against it too. But she was really also such a good writer. And I feel traces of Lorena Hickok back with Steinbeck. It's the same time, the same atmosphere, the same observations, really.
So let me ask you about one more incident that really strikes me. And this is another one that Steigerwald said just could not have happened. In Idaho, he comes to a set of primitive cabins and stays the night, and a young man who's 20, who has an ascot and who reads The New Yorker, comes to him, and it seems clear to me that he's writing about a closeted gay young man whose father is hostile to his orientation. Steigerwald says that didn't happen, but of course that could happen. That's one of the stories that would be hard to place in the book if it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's again the same. Indeed. The stranger it is, the biggest possibility is that it really happened. Because Steinbeck wanted to make a show that he was really a lonely reporter talking with everybody, and parts of this loneliness, that was part of the show. And often I don't trust it. Again, these strange meetings, well, that's very well possible, but you will never know. It is also possible that he met someone. A lot of travel writers are doing that, in fact, someone in, let's say, New Orleans, while in reality he met someone in California or something like that. So everything is possible. So he placed one person from one place into the story. That's very well possible too.
Of course. However, and not to be argumentative about this at all, but Idaho was and is a very conservative, even right-wing sort of place. And so to meet this man who is clearly in agony about his own sexual orientation and his tension and conflict with his father, it has greater piquancy, greater emotional content in Idaho than it would have in California or New York.
Yeah, again, I think again it is stranger. The more stranger it is, the better, the more possible it is. Yeah, that's that's the way I look at these things. But you, as an American, for me, it is of course a lot of details are better known. So I think also Bill Steigerwald. Bill was at the end, he was very anti-Steinbeck as a journalist. He felt almost offended. He liked Steinbeck as a guy, and he bought a gun, and Bill thought that was fantastic. This is my guy. So he was very disappointed. And I'm not so disappointed. I said, okay, this is a man, a kind of midlife crisis. He wants to make a show. Okay. So I was not so shocked at the end. And I know how travel writers are working. And I'm more like Bill Stein. I'm a really journalist. So I never make up something. I try to find when it rains in my book, it has rained. And I don't, I want to write, I look very well. I look at the details. And I think the reality brings such a good story already that you don't make up the fake. Don't fake things. It is not necessary.
So what bothers me? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
I think Steinbeck is interesting for me too. And then as a European, I'm looking for outside. While in 1960, his book is full of it. The American dream was still full existing. And when I talked with people 50 years later in the diners, people were very disappointed. You could see in 2010 already the Trump revolution coming. And it was all, well, in 1960, people have also difficult life, difficult times, but they know their kids, the boys and girls, it would be better and better. The future would be better for them. All kinds of things. And in 2010, people were pessimistic. They thought that the future of our children will be worse. And that is really, it was the end of the big American promise. And that is, of course, that is a very deep change and a very deep difference between 1960 and 2010.
Absolutely. In the end of the book, in your epilogue, you ask, what would Steinbeck think of the America that you saw with your wife in 2010? And on page 487, there's a chilling sentence. And if you think of what it meant when you published the book, think of what it would mean now. You say, it seems as if American politics is approaching the limit of what popular democracy can handle. That's only become much more pronounced in the years since.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it is, I must say, it is with sadness. We in Europe are observing that, because America has always been, with all the mistakes and all the terrible things which happened too, America was always inspiring for us, very inspiring. And for instance, the European Union, it is all American inspiration was made to who started the European Union. So that is what happens in the United States is really also very difficult to see. And at the moment in Europe, we all think we have to do it ourselves, and it is with reason. We couldn't be. Also our army, we cannot be dependent of the United States forever. We are Europe is rich and grown up. We have to do it ourselves. I agree totally with that. But our formation is gone, and you are going to vote in November again. But we wish we could vote too. And it is not, of course, which guy will lead the country, but it is also who will lead the Western world. Or not lead, we will see.
We need to take a short break. Fascinating. I want to come back to this. I'm having a conversation with the eminent journalist Geert Mak of the Netherlands. This is a special edition of Listening to America. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Listening to America. Across from me, at least virtually, is Geert Mak, the distinguished journalist from the Netherlands. His book, In America, Travels with John Steinbeck, is of 500 and some pages. You know, one of the things that's interesting to me about this book is that you did what Steinbeck wanted to do. In other words, he wanted to go out and really explore what America was, its mood, its people, its voices, its regionalisms, its cuisine, the changes. He said he had been away from the heartland so long that he no longer really understood his own country. And then he went out to do this, but in a sense, he sort of faked it because he rushed around trying to catch up with Elaine. His health wasn't good. He probably did not sleep in the truck very often. He sort of went through the motions of that journey, but then he went away and wrote a really interesting short book about it. But he never really did what you did, which was to try to really wrestle with American ideas.
I wanted to write a kind of an introduction for Europeans to the United States. I wanted to take Europeans with me on this trip.
And did you? Did the book sell well in Europe?
Oh, yeah, very much, very well, yeah.
Did you get responses by Europeans to the book?
200,000, about that.
Amazing.
And also in Great Britain, in Germany. It sold very well in Germany, too. Mm-hmm. I took not Charley with me, with my wife, and in the back seat, a lot of fellow Europeans. What is this America? So there is a lot of history in the book, for instance. Mm-hmm. And there are lots so I'm introducing also a lot of things that, for Americans, they are normal, but for Europeans, not. And that is another way of thinking of Steinbeck. Steinbeck wrote for his fellow Americans. I'm writing for my fellow Europeans. And what are the differences? What is common to us, how the country is changed, and so on, and so on, and so on. Different attitude.
Something that is really interesting to me in your book is that you had to modulate your judgments about America. And you're often quite harsh about Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. And you quote Neil Ferguson saying Americans don't have any staying power in their empire. And talk about American obesity and the lack of health in America and our broken healthcare system. You're not afraid to tell the truth as you see it about the difficulties and the failures of the U.S.
It's my job, yeah. And of course, for us, for instance, the health system in America is now it is changing, I believe, a bit and improves, but it is for a European, even when you are extreme left or extreme right, all Europeans have the same kind of ideas about healthcare system. We have to do that together. But we have other stuff. This is not, and about Iraq. Let's say for Europeans, often the problem is the triumphalism. We survived the war, and now we are fantastic. Western Europeans, especially, and we never had an idea for what happened exactly in Eastern Europe. That's really in Western Europe. The problem is always triumph. For Americans, it is often a kind of exceptionalism. We are a special country, and we are so good. The Americans often don't see what is really happening in other countries. For instance, I was very angry about the war in Iraq, also because that was the Bush government who said we have the right to invade and so on. And of course, it was an enormous mistake. And you see the same happening now with around Russia and Ukraine. What's happening now in Russia, it is a criminal state. It is disgusting, let's be clear about that. The Dutch and the British Empire, and so especially these two, it was also terrible, really. very imperialistic. But there was one good thing. They, even already in the beginning of the 20th century, they were very involved with the countries, and they knew quite a lot about those countries. And the problem is with the American public they don't know their empire.
Don't care either, really.
They don't care, but also they don't know what kind of countries they are, where you have to be careful, and that is the reason I think in America often there are also very very wise and good statesmen. For instance, the old Bush was very wise when the Soviet Union collapsed. He was very wise.
Did it very slow and gently, didn't triumph.
That is a very wise American statesman. But the young Bush, no.
Not so much.
So, but I don't want to say, let me be clear, that it is this what is happening now in Ukraine. That's the fault of America. It is not. It is really the thing that is Putin, and it's really disgusting, of course, what's happening at the moment.
Twice in the book, you quote George Kennan, the distinguished American diplomat, saying, "Look, this is in the 50s, but he says, look, we have 6% of the world's population and we have 35% of the world's wealth. Our foreign policy has to be tuned to protect that, to keep that alive."
Yeah. I think that's kind of, but also to keep that in balance. George Kennan was very wise. George Kennan said, he was one of the guys also at the end of the life. In the 90s, he wrote a big article in New York Times, also against take care with the NATO. Because that is so, now, even Navalny would have been against it. There was not Navalny in that time, but so, that is, we were living now it is a dangerous time. And I think also we see also now, as when you see America as an empire, it's an empire in decline.
Yes.
And when an empire is in decline, it is always a very dangerous situation.
Do you think that America is in decline? Not just the empire, but the United States of America. Do you think it's in decline?
It could be. I don't hope it, because America has a lot of, it is a very dynamic country and very strong country. But it shows all the symptoms of an empire in decline, but also a country in decline. Yes. But
so this doesn't. You're not enjoying our decline. This really troubles you.
No. America had made a lot of mistakes, and we in Europe too. Europeans had a habit to kill each other every second generation. So. But it is a country in decline can be very dangerous, because they're starting wars to cover, to hide their decline. And I'm worried because I'm now writing about the Roosevelt times and also everything around it. And it is in some way, of course, you can agree about Roosevelt, and he made also mistakes. But in fact, it was a very inspiring time, and also the way he didn't become a socialist. People now in America say, "Oh, he was even a communist." No, he saved capitalism, in fact.
So let me change. Can I move the subject back to Steinbeck for the remainder of the program? But what I love about the book is your commentary on the United States. You took seriously the Steinbeck challenge, which wasn't, a lot of people just retrace his route and talk about what they saw, or write about the taverns that they go into and so on. But you really wrestled with America, which I love about this book. When you're out there, Geert, on day 12 or day 37 or whatever, you're traveling 10,000 miles the way he did. When you look at the vastness and essentially the emptiness of America, what was it like for you and your wife to wander through Montana or Idaho?
A ship in the middle of the ocean. And it is a certain rhythm you get, and it is a very special experience. Yeah. Yeah. So, oh yeah, I understand very well how fascinating the country can be and is, and the differences. It is such from the Maine to through indeed the Dakotas till California, and the nature also. It is everything with Americans. Always everything is bigger, greater, faster, but there's also the American nature. And I must really tell, Steinbeck was also crazy to be afraid of people because how the political differences all, are, American are fantastic to talk with it. It is for a journalist is an El Dorado. Everyone wants to speak. The hospitality is enormous. That is the good thing, and I really hope that the Americans pick up this attitude again. Also, not only to the Europeans we travel around, but also to each other. Uh, Give also others each other's ideas some hospitality. Uh, you are such an open country. Please come back.
Come back, come back. You saw the whole country, or at least the perimeter. What were you as he when Steinbeck got to Montana? He said, "This is my state. This is my favorite place." What were your favorite places?
Oregon. Yes, Oregon was beautiful. It was a surprise. Washington, California, of course. But I'm a little bit. I spent a lot of time with friends in California. Really, I was on. I was and am part of the family. So, Bay Area is also a favorite place. But also Maine. The Yeah, it's really when I mention those places and those names, every time my heart jumps up. Really, both. Yeah.
When Steinbeck left Sag Harbor, he said everyone wanted to go with him. When you told people in the Netherlands that you were going to do this crazy thing, were people filled with a sense of wonder and envy?
Yeah, but the Europeans travel quite a lot. So I felt this envy, for instance, and on the borderline, somewhere at the border of Washington, between, I believe, Washington and Oregon, a guy fuel station. We talked a little bit, and we told what we were doing. I said, "Oh my God." He has never been out of his county even. A lot of Americans, the Europeans have much more holidays than the Americans, so they travel more. And so I wish also Americans travel if possible, but and here in Europe there were quite a lot of people I talked with. They followed, yeah, they went on holiday and followed my book and rented trucks and cars and yeah, I think Steinbeck and I and Steigerwald, we got a lot of followers. Yes.
You got followers. So when Steinbeck left Austin, Texas, after saying goodbye to his wife for the last time on the journey, she then went back to New York. He said, I dread going into the Deep South. And it turned out to be even worse than he had thought. What did you make of race in America, race relations in America in 2010?
Yeah, I'm a white guy. So when you are, you feel that when you're not a white guy. But it is, of course, since the 60s, it has changed a lot, really changed a lot. But the old attitudes are deep. And I understand very well the problems. And but when I see, for instance, in the 30s, I'm writing about that now. Jesse Owens, he won the Olympic, the black guy won the Olympic Games in 36. In the Nazi Germany, he had a fantastic time. Really, it was interesting. He came in New York back. He ticker tape parade, and he went to the Waldorf Astoria for a great honorary dinner. But he had to take the escalator for goods. It was not permitted that a black guy went into the head entrance of the Waldorf Astoria. That was 1936. So
even on an evening that was in his honor.
A day was it. In that, so stark was it. So things are changing. Yeah. But not, I understand very well, not enough. No, But yeah, I think when I would have been colored or black, I would have looked back, think, yes, we have reached a lot of, yeah, really. But when I look forward, when I look at education, healthcare, poverty, and so on, there is still a long way to go. Yeah.
Of course. You only mentioned Native Americans, American Indians a couple of times. Did you have encounters with natives?
No, no, it is. I think when you ask this, I have regretted that before. Yeah, one of these talks has been also with the Native Americans. Yeah, so that is really in somehow it isn't. I mentioned it, I wrote about it, but I didn't talk with them, and that's really I had to do that. Yeah.
Next time.
Also, my trip was not uh, without mistakes.
So by the time Steinbeck got to Monterey, he was already sort of running out of energy. By the time he got to New Orleans, he was finished, and he just bolted home as fast as he possibly could, barely even stopping to sleep. At any point in the journey, did you think, "Oh, this is too hard, too long, the distances are too great. I'm kind of exhausted."
Yeah, but we're talking. I had to read a book before too. Before we talked to each other again, I thought already was I wrote this book. Yeah, it was published more than 10 years ago. I remember was one place. You read it better than I did. There was one place that in the morning, he had in the morning an interesting meeting, then a long talk, two long talks, and then he drove also, I think, yeah,
Hundreds of miles. Right.
Somewhere after 1/3 of his book. There he did, and I said that you cannot do that. So I thought two things. I thought speed and make up. Yeah, because it were talks, but also there were talks. It is very well possible that he met people like that
At some point in his life or somewhere.
somewhere, but it was a very long and interesting talk, and he had a fishing trip with someone, and everything in one day. No, nothing. I thought, no, John, that was not possible.
So, Geert, what did you learn about yourself on this journey?
A good question. A good question. How American I am myself. I think I was. I was I think great part of my journalistic life was always involved with America, American newspapers. I am in Europe. We say he is a continental guy or he is an Atlantic guy. I'm a typical Atlantic guy. And I learned, yeah, I think you said it already in North Dakota and in the Plains. I learned a lot about space and how important that is, and how can it makes it your spirit? Can you make your spirit more free? Yeah, I learned that too, and Americans learned me also a lot about hospitality. Really, and about friendliness and about civilized behavior, not with firearms, but civilized behavior in traffic compared with Europe. Really, of course, you see in the movies always Americans shooting and driving like hell, but in reality, compared with Europe, the Americans are very civilized in traffic. You learn these things, you learn too.
When do you come back to the U.S.?
When we talk together, I think tomorrow perhaps. But
This has been such fun. We're out of time. I'm so sorry. I hope we can talk again. To all of our listeners, we'll see you next week for another interesting edition of Listening to America.